These two right here, I tell you what. When can you go to confession if you've already been baptized and you're a candidate? And the answer would be, I guess right now, about any time. I think they'd said something like after the rite of election. And so any time, perhaps in 2 weeks from tonight. Next week I will not be here, but in 2 weeks I will. Perhaps at 8:30 when one of us goes to the regular confessional, the other one of us could just find another spot for some of the folk who are here that would like to have maybe a special time just for the RCIA people. But honestly, we have confessions on Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, Thursday nights. It's not as public. A lot of people don't know about it. We do it in the quieting/cry room, because that's the night that they have praise and worship music going on. And so we will have confessions pretty much every weekday, and then Friday mornings at 10 o'clock in the morning. And so any of those times would be fine as well. If you've already been baptized, it is appropriate for you to go to confession prior to receiving the sacraments at Easter. And then those of you who have not been baptized, you will not need to do that, but I would recommend don't wait too long after being baptized to go to confession, because then it could be like daunting, frightening thing, and then all of a sudden 2 months turns into 2 years, it turns into 20 years, and I got baptized, but I never went to confession. And I've heard stories like that. But honestly, if you guys want to go to confession tonight, one of us will be in the confessional, and it'd be great to have you. An examination of conscience is a good idea. A sheet of paper that talks about what things people generally struggle with. And I think it's also a good idea, I don't know, Father Ryan, if you think it's a good idea when people actually bring in a list. I like that. I'm not at all against that. So just know that, and if it's your first time ever going to confession, you just say that. You might step in and you say, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. It's been since my last confession." That's kind of the normal way it goes. But if you've never been to confession, you can say, "Bless me, Father," or "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." And then you would just simply say, and Father, I've never been to confession. And if you can't remember that phrase that I just said, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," or "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned," just walk in and say, "Father, first time, I have no idea what I'm doing. Help me out here." And that's going to be okay as well. All right? All of those things are going to be just fine. Okay. So you can ask questions now about that, or you can ask questions about the whole idea of morality and what we just watched. Yes, Dara?
Two things that I haven't been doing just because I didn't know if it was okay. One is I have never dipped my hand in the holy water, and I do not on Sundays. And two, after you recite the gospel, the Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, so, well, this one is simply a gesture that says, "May the Lord be in my mind, on my lips, and in my heart." Totally cool if you want to do that, okay? It's just a prayer invoking the Lord to be in all parts of your body. The dipping of your hand into the holy water and blessing yourself, it's ultimately used as what? It's a reminder of your baptism. And so if you haven't been baptized, it makes sense that you don't, but if you want to, you can, okay? It won't psst or anything like that. So, even in like preparation for that which will take place soon. Okay? We did have a question that was up here. Why do we genuflect, and why do we bless ourselves with holy water at Mass? The holy water, we just explained, it's a remembrance of your baptism in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit. But it's also a signing of oneself with the cross, the sign of the cross, the sign of Jesus' victory over death, Jesus' victory over sin and evil. And so it's claiming ourselves once again for Jesus Christ. And so the sign of the cross, especially the sign of the cross with holy water, is a beautiful thing. Genuflecting, dropping to one knee, is simply a sign of reverence that we are in the presence of God, in the presence of the King, in the presence of the great one, the greatness of our God, the grandeur and majesty of our God, God present in the tabernacle. And that's why we usually drop to one knee. A lot of times, again, we make the sign of the cross while we do so. it's appropriate to know kind of where the tabernacle is when you genuflect. Yeah. Hey.
A lot of times I see this happening during the Easter Carillon when Christ is not present in the tabernacle, and
Sure.
should be still reflect.
Right, so on Good Friday, you'll come in and Christ will not be present in the tabernacle. The tabernacle will have been emptied, sitting open and empty, symbolic of Christ laying in the tomb, not present, not with us, dead. And so the symbolism of that is profound, and there's no reason to genuflect at that time. And usually the holy water also will be removed from the holy water, but we'll see a lot of people do it. And then they genuflect to an empty tabernacle, and that's okay. I mean, it's not like, again, if you do it, you don't need to be like going to confession for it, but it's kind of a habitual thing, but maybe it'll make you remember then the next time, like, whoa, there is a purpose behind all of this. Yeah.
So back home in Liberal Kansas, my mom said that when Lent started, that they drained the water then.
They drain the water at the beginning of Lent. It's interesting to me. I had not heard about that. I think I've heard about it maybe at times like Holy Week, or the week in preparation for Easter. That's when it's usually done, and they cover statues and stuff like that. Yeah, that guy doesn't know what he's doing. Father Jake Schneider. If he does something, do the opposite. See, so this guy told Vanessa that when she meets me that she's supposed to kick me in the knee. So you don't trust that guy. No, he's great. He's a classmate of both of ours. Yeah.
So I know, like, if you have mortal sin in your soul, you can't go to heaven. But can you go to hell if you don't have mortal sin on your soul?
So, okay, the question, if you have mortal sin on your soul, meaning a sin that has separated you from union with God, it says you can't go to heaven, because how can you be in union with God if you are separated from union with God? That's kind of the whole definition of mortal sin. It's a sin that mortally wounds you for all eternity. And if you die with a mortal sin, then you don't live with God. Now, can you go to hell if you don't have mortal sin on your soul? I would say no. Yeah? What would you say? I think the definition is an offense against God that has separated you from communion with God. So,
I just think that.
yeah, Chase.
What would you say if you find yourself remembering sins from long ago that probably didn't
Okay, so, and you can tell me if you disagree with this, Father Ryan, but if you have sins that you remember that you've never confessed, well, one of the things that we do is we will generally at the end of our confession say, and for those sins that I cannot remember. Okay. But maybe for some reason, maybe you just didn't recognize it as a sin, or maybe you've kind of blocked it out of your memory, and a number of years later you remember something, and it was pretty grave, egregious, like really something that once you start thinking about it, it's like, whoa. I would say, don't fret by the simple not remembering it and confessing all of those sins. If it was a heartfelt confession that says, and for all the sins that I cannot remember, that doesn't mean the clown that's going to use that term hoping that he's going to be able to get away without actually saying what he does remember. That's different. But the not remembering and having a heartfelt confession removes even those sins. Yet it can be advantageous to bring them up in a confessional, especially if they're somewhat grave. Just say, Father, I never confess this, and I just feel like I should. Not a problem if you do. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that, and because there's a lot of things that people even have some memories that come back, and our thoughts can cause us to sin. You covet something, that is a sin. It's one of the 10 Commandments. So your thoughts, you should be confessing those. And so some of your memories come back and you just was like, oh, it caused me to act in this way. So it's good to come in and get that off of your soul.
But don't live with the fear that those sins weren't forgiven.
Right.
Bren, and then back to Dara. Or let's go Bren, and then over here, and then over here.
So when they're trying to get in the videos about the virtues, the active circumstance, how do you verify, what about those
So the act, the circumstance, and the intention, yeah. And so killing somebody in the line of duty. You would say that really killing for protection is a neutral. It's not an evil act, killing for the protection of others. But I understand what you're saying, just taking a human life. You're like, well, wait a second, how can that be a good? Well, it's not. But you're at the same time saving a human life by perhaps, and especially, and there's a lot to be written about, even like just war. And I was thinking about that, in fact, as I was teaching it, I was like, somebody's going to bring this up. So I've been thinking about it, and so I didn't research it as I have, but... Okay, over here. No. Okay. Then let's go over here to Dara.
It does look more like change or ways that you are equipped or the ways that your perspectives were changed and how you carry that into then a lot of almost.
So did everybody kind of follow that and hear that? Basically saying, she would imagine it's going to be harder to live a life of virtue managing a bar than going to a seminary for 7 or 8 years, or living in a convent. And while different sins present themselves to you even in a seminary, and a lot of times it becomes like sins of pride or, that kind of ugly kind of sin that then says, well, look at me, I'm better than that person, and all of it's ugly. I would say yes, when you remove yourself from situations, then you're going to become more righteous. Surround yourself by people who are righteous, and you become more righteous. And so, is God maybe one day calling you to not be a manager of a bar? I don't know. Maybe it's going to become the most righteous of all bars of all times because of you. Please, and yes, ma'am, and may I have another drink? But, ma'am, if it's just one too many, please tell me no. Let us hope and pray. Let us hope and pray for a world that exists. But I think, yeah, absolutely it becomes easier. I mean, there's certain sins will become more difficult to deal with, like pride. But it's easier. I'll let you talk on that too.
Yeah, seminary is a place that you're kind of in a fishbowl, and you're like, wow, there's a lot of good guys out here. But then we do the comparison game as well, and so comparison is, one of the things that I enjoyed about Chris Stefanik at the beginning. He talked about being able to judge and see whether or not an act is wrong, because we could see that an act is wrong and we can actually admonish people. And so we can look at that, but what happens is when in the seminary we look at like I would look at a guy and say like, oh my gosh, he doesn't come to prayer on time, therefore he is not a good spiritual person. And I go, look at me, I come to prayer on time all the time. I can kneel longer than everybody else. I mean, seriously, it's really a goofy thing, and it's just like, no. What I'm dealing with is pride, and so, and then I can actually go and actually talk to that guy and actually see where he's at, and what he's at is he's in a spiritual different area. We just don't know where they're at, and that's why we can't read minds at all, but we can judge the act, and whatever their act was. So he didn't come to prayer on time. Is that a big sin? No. So you actually have a possibility of seeing a whole bunch of acts and then kind of judging it and being able to say, actually all of you are seeing acts, and then what judgment can I make on the act, not the person? And yeah, how's that feel? Sound, not feel, sound. Okay. Are you?
And I'm going to go with confessional, so.
He's going to hit the confessional. I guess I'm going to. Any other questions? Otherwise, you're going into group section. So. No questions? Awesome. So you guys have your questions in there, and you can break into groups. One of the things that I actually do want to state, there are some new faces in the crowd. Some of you may not know some people. You're like, where'd they come from? Like Vanessa, for instance. She just kind of popped in at the end of last semester kind of thing. And so get to know some people. I know that I need to say that as well for myself. I need to get to know some of your new faces. So let's not be shy. All right. Thank you.